At the returns counter, a woman in oversized sunglasses slid forward an empty candle jar, a dead houseplant, and a blender box containing only the manual. Behind her, a man rehearsed a speech about a steak he had already eaten, and a teenager held up a cracked phone like gravity had personally violated a warranty. That is how this species of refund logic survives, not through evidence. Through volume performance and the old national belief that inconvenience is a debt somebody else should pay. When did customer satisfaction become reverse time? At what point did regret start dressing up as consumer rights? And how many laminated store policies were printed because one confident person kept treating consequences like defective merchandise? The file gets worse from here. 1. By noon, the coffee was gone except for a warm inch at the bottom. And that was when the customer decided it had cooled too fast. She had carried it through 3 stores, 2 phone calls, and a 15-minute parking lot monologue. Heat leaves paper cups, whether the customer respects physics or not. The cashier looked at the lipstick ring, glanced at the empty handoff station, and rejected the refund like a weather complaint. 2. After finishing nearly an entire rotisserie chicken in the food court seating area, a man marched back with a tray of bones and declared it way too salty to enjoy. That announcement came a full 20 minutes after he had licked his fingers, borrowed extra napkins, and asked where the nearest trash can was. Sodium did not ambush him at the final bite. The manager declined the refund and inherited a plate of forensic evidence. 3. Saturday night left traces all over the dress. Makeup dusted the collar, perfume sat in the fabric, and the hem had picked up enough bar floor grime to qualify as local history. On Sunday, the buyer returned it with the tags pinned back on and a speech about poor fit. The store had seen this movie before. Stitch lines, remember body's deodorant, remembers panic. And the refund was rejected under fluorescent lighting and mutual exhaustion. 4. The boxed bookshelf had arrived perfectly flat and perfectly innocent. Then came an evening of impatient assembly, one missing glance at the instructions, and a heroic decision to force the side panels in backward. When the customer dragged the wobbling result back to customer service, the corners were stripped and the veneer looked sanded by rage. Damage caused during assembly does not magically become manufacturer fault. The clerk denied the return while one shelf leaned like it had lost faith. 5. In the toy aisle, a father demanded his money back because the dinosaur came incomplete. The evidence was a box full of plastic parts, torn twist ties, and one sticker sheet already half applied by a child with sugar energy and poor aim. The missing tail later turned up in the cup holder of his SUV. Retail law rarely recognizes my kid started the adventure immediately as a product defect. The refund died beside the barcode scanner. 6. The inflatable pool had survived shipping, survived the front lawn, and survived setup. What it did not survive was the family dog, who launched into it like a furry javelin and opened a neat little puncture with one excited claw. The customer returned with wet vinyl and the argument that it should be pet-friendly. Most backyard objects are not designed for airborne Labrador impact. The store rejected the refund, and the pool folded into itself like offended blue skin. 7. A teenager dropped his phone off the bleachers, heard the crack, and came in furious at the case manufacturer for false confidence. The packaging had promised drop protection, not immunity from concrete. Height and bad decisions taken one-handed during a live stream. Impact force still travels, especially when gravity gets a clear runway. The employee read the warranty pointed to the spiderweb screen and refused to reimburse physics. 8. By the time the complaint reached the bakery counter, the cake had already done its job at the birthday party. Only one collapsed corner remained, along with a photo on the customer's phone proving the frosting message had been slightly off-center. She wanted a full refund because presentation matters. So does waiting until after 30 guests have eaten it. The bakery kept the money, and the surviving buttercream sat there like the last witness. 9. The haircut looked fine under salon lights during the mirror turn, and in the cheerful moment when the tip was handed over. The disaster, according to the customer, began the next morning after sleep, humidity, and one ambitious attempt with a drugstore curling wand. Hair has memory, but it also has weather oil and owners. The salon rejected the refund and declined responsibility for what happened after bedtime. 10. A sedan rolled back into the gas station with soap still drying near the mirrors and one long scratch still visible on the passenger door. The driver wanted the car wash refunded because it had failed to clean the damage. Dirt and damage are not the same department. Brushes can remove road film, They cannot erase metal that has already met a shopping cart in anger. The cashier denied the claim while the customer stared at the scratch like betrayal had a reflection. 11. The movie rental lasted 2 hours. The ending was sad, and that was apparently grounds for compensation. The viewer emailed support arguing that the film had been marketed as fun and had instead delivered grief in tasteful lighting. Emotional dissatisfaction is not a billing error, and streaming rights do not include a happiness guarantee. Customer support sent a polite no, while the account history quietly confirmed he had watched the whole thing to the final credits song. 12. At the theme park gate, a family requested partial refunds because the lines had been long, the sun had been hot, and several thousand other guests had chosen the same holiday weekend. Nothing about the complaint was false except the implied surprise. Popularity creates waiting. Heat exists outdoors. The posted calendar had practically shouted this in bright colors weeks earlier. Guest services said no, and the churro sugar on the father's shirt kept sparkling through the speech. 13. 4 plates into an all-you-can-eat buffet. A customer concluded that the experience had not been worth the price. By then, he had sampled shrimp, carved beef, 2 desserts, and enough soft serve to lose structural stability. Value calculations made after maximum extraction tend to look suspiciously like buyer's remorse in loafers. The manager rejected the refund and cleared away a plate arrangement that resembled a tiny battlefield of sauces. 14. The umbrella opened beautifully in the store, closed beautifully at checkout, and failed heroically an hour later in a storm with sideways wind that could have humbled patio furniture. The customer brought back the inverted frame and called it cheap. Wind does not read branding. Once gusts bend the ribs past their limit, metal becomes modern sculpture. The retailer refused the refund, and the umbrella sat in the bin like a black flower after combat. 15. She bought the ice cream cake at 2 in the afternoon, carried it through errands, posed with it in a parked car for photos, and finally opened the box near sunset. By then, the frosting had softened into a glossy slope. Cold chain rules are not decorative. Frozen desserts are loyal only to temperature. The store denied the refund, and the writing on top kept sliding south in slow, sugary surrender. 16. The laptop had performed normally until red wine entered the story. A full glass tipped during a dinner party laugh, and the owner appeared the next morning demanding a refund because the keyboard should resist accidents. Some devices do survive spills. Many do not because liquid loves circuits and sugar leaves behind a sticky little electrical crime scene. The electronics store declined the return while one key still smelled faintly like Merlot and regret. 17. 8 months into sleeping on the mattress, a buyer decided it was emotionally wrong for the room. The actual problem seemed to be that he had broken up, redecorated, and now wanted the old purchase erased along with the rest of that year. Trial periods end. Foam remembers weight. Retailers are not memory-wiping services with box springs. The refund request was rejected, and the mattress remained a rectangular hostage to personal growth. 18. Halfway through the month, a gym member demanded his fees back because the treadmills were too exhausting. That was not sarcasm. He truly believed the machines had made the workout harsher than expected, as if cardio had betrayed its own marketing. Elevated heart rate is the feature, not an unforeseeable side effect. The front desk denied the refund while he stood there in brand new sneakers shining with beginner outrage. 19. In a home office full of crumpled worksheets, a customer returned with an empty printer cartridge box and the accusation that the ink ran out suspiciously fast. The printer logs showed hundreds of pages already pushed through during a last-minute school project week. Ink disappears when ink gets used. This is one of the more stable relationships in modern life. The store refused the refund and quietly admired the evidence trail in monochrome. 20. On the first business day after Christmas, someone tried to return a massive seasonal wreath because it did not end up matching the room. The room had apparently been festive enough to host a full holiday. Family photos, and one roast whose grease still scented the outer ribbon. Seasonal decor tends to complete its life cycle on schedule. The clerk rejected the refund, while glitter fell off the bow like exhausted confetti from a finished era. 21. A seafood dinner had gone badly, but not because of the seafood. The couple spent most of the evening fighting in whispers sharp enough to cut bread, and by dessert, the man wanted the entire bill refunded because the restaurant had ruined the anniversary mood. The restaurant had supplied oysters, candles, and a competent waiter. It had not supplied emotional stability. Management declined the refund while the untouched cheesecake sweated gently between them. 22. A houseplant came back to the garden center as a stem pot, and several leaves that had clearly endured a week in direct afternoon sun beside a window the customer called bright and cheerful. Tropical plants do enjoy light. They do not enjoy being slow roasted out of existence. Care tags are short because the rules are short. The refund was denied, and the fern remains of that optimism drooped across the counter. 23. During a backyard barbecue, the cheap folding chair broke under a man who had ignored the weight limit sticker and then used it like performance art for the next 10 minutes. On Monday, he demanded a refund for unsafe furniture. Capacity labels are not decorative legal haiku. They are the last polite warning before metal tubes remember engineering. The store said no, and the bent chair looked like it had spent the weekend carrying a secret. 24. The airline desk heard the refund request after the passengers arrived 40 minutes late. Coffee in hand, insisting traffic had been unreasonable. Planes do many things poorly, but they do not usually delay themselves to honor a personal sense of timing. Boarding doors close because schedules require cruelty by the minute. The fare was non-refundable. The gate screen had already moved on, and the family started bargaining with fate in matching neck pillows. 25. He bought an online course on Friday, watched none of it, ignored the workbook, and wrote on Monday asking for a refund because the material didn't change my business mindset. Transformation does not usually enter through the receipt email. Learning still requires the deeply offensive step of participation. Support rejected the refund and left the unopened lesson modules sitting there like a silent row of witnesses. Somewhere around this point, the file stops being about bad luck and starts looking like a national allergy to ownership. The receipts get longer and the excuses somehow get even shorter. 26. The formal shoes looked elegant on the website and acceptable for the first 15 minutes of the wedding. 3 hours later, after dancing, standing, and refusing to sit down for fear of wrinkling the dress code, the buyer demanded a refund because they caused pain. Narrow heels tend to announce themselves honestly. Feet just hear what vanity permits. The boutique declined the return while the satin toes showed the night's full confession. 27. A nonstick pan came back with silver claw marks across the surface, and a customer who swore the coating had mysteriously failed. Mysteriously in this case meant repeatedly scraping it with a metal fork because the spatula was too far away. Non-stick coatings work best when not excavated like a parking lot. The store denied the refund, and the pan glinted under the lights like forensic cookware. 28. Paint looked warm beige in the hardware store, soft taupe in daylight, and absolutely criminal once the customer got it home and turned on cold blue bulbs after sunset. Lighting shifts color perception faster than arguments shift blame. The tint formula had done exactly what it was told. The manager rejected the refund, and the sample card sat there like a tiny hostage to interior design mood swings. 29. The venue deposit became controversial only after 3 relatives started fighting over table placement. One aunt threatened to leave, and the groom's father discovered an open bar does not cure old resentments. Suddenly, the bride wanted the money back because the space had bad energy. Rental halls can provide chairs, lights, and exits. They cannot launder family history. The venue kept the deposit, and the planner kept blinking like a smoke detector. 30. New prescription glasses gave one man exactly what he had asked for: clear vision. Unfortunately, clear vision also meant a clearer look at his pores, his dashboard, and the human condition at grocery checkout. He wanted a refund because everything looks too harsh now. Corrective lenses are famously rude in that way. The optician refused the refund while he stared at his own receipt with unprecedented detail. 31. The router had been unplugged so someone could vacuum behind the media console, and that small domestic choice caused an hour of internet panic. 3 missed video calls and 1 furious demand for a full month's credit. Support walked the customer through the cords, the lights, and the rediscovery of electricity. Outages caused inside the house rarely qualify as corporate negligence. The refund was denied and the modem resumed blinking like tired patients. 32. At the community pool office, a resident asked for his summer membership feedback. Because June had been cloudier than advertised, weather forecasting has become many things, but it has not become a contract between the sky and the billing desk. The pool had remained open, chlorinated, and structurally committed. Management refused the refund while his printed complaint curled at the edges in damp, defeated air. 33. After forgetting the location of her own car in a multi-level garage, a shopper demanded her parking fee returned because the facility was too confusing to navigate. The garage, to be fair, had giant painted numbers, colored zones, and arrows the size of minor road signs. Memory failure is not fraudulent parking architecture. The attendant denied the refund while she kept clicking the remote and listening for a beep that never forgave her. 34. A parent discovered a yearly app subscription after a child had tapped through the purchase screen during cartoon time, and she arrived ready for battle over predatory design. The platform checked the account, saw months of use bonus content unlocked, and repeated logins from the same device. Children can start the purchase. Adults keep it alive. The refund was rejected, and the tablet case carried a smear of peanut butter into the hearing. 35. Mid-flight, the dog barked at every cart, every overhead bin, and one passenger who merely stood up too quickly. After landing, the owner wanted the pet fee refunded because the animal had a stressful experience. That was true. So had everyone within 6 rows. Airlines charge for transport, not emotional harmony, and the dog had still occupied space paperwork and a measurable amount of cabin peace. The refund stayed firmly on the ground. 36. The minibar charge appeared because the little bottle had been opened, half consumed, and then carefully topped off with water in a move the guest clearly considered strategic. Housekeeping sees this trick often enough to recognize the dilution line from the doorway. Tamper-evident seals exist for exactly this species of optimism. The hotel rejected the refund, and the bottle sat in the audit photo looking thin and insulted. 37. A wedding photographer held the date blocked the weekend, turned down other clients, and then got a furious email asking for the deposit back because the bride had changed the entire theme, timeline, and venue twice before finally postponing. Deposits exist to pay for held time, not emotional weather. Once a calendar slot is gone, it does not grow back. The refund was denied, and the saved mood boards glowed on screen like museum evidence. 38. Tax season always produces someone who thinks refund means reward, which is how one client ended up demanding his preparation fee back after learning his actual tax refund would be smaller than the fantasy number he had narrated to friends. Math is not disloyal just because it arrives sober. The preparer kept the fee, and the client left clutching a folder full of documents and shattered folklore. 39. The tow yard window heard a long speech about injustice from a driver whose car had been parked directly beside a red fire hydrant he claimed looked inactive. Hydrants do not clock out. Red curbs are not decorative municipal drama. Emergency access rules stay boring until a truck appears, and then they become very specific very fast. The towing charge remained, and his outrage bounced off the glass like a pinged receipt. 40. A spa guest requested a refund because the silence policy had made her feel judged for talking. That revelation came after she had narrated her divorce, her cleanse, and her nephew's acting ambitions at full restaurant volume inside the relaxation room. Some spaces sell treatment. Others sell the absence of people like this. The spa refused the refund, and a cucumber slice kept sliding down one eye in silent agreement. 41. The moving truck seemed cheaply overpriced only after the apartment was revealed to contain far more furniture than the online estimate had claimed. 3 extra chairs, 2 bookcases, a hidden treadmill, and several boxes marked "misturned optimism into labor." Volume does not care about digital wishful thinking. The company rejected the refund request, and the exhausted movers kept wrapping lamps like men preserving ancient artifacts. 42. Appliance delivery went smoothly right up to the front door, where the customer learned that standard width is not a magical phrase that makes refrigerators pass through narrow hallway turns. Measurements matter because walls do not negotiate. The team still made the trip, still provided the service, and still collected the fee. The refund request was denied, while the new fridge waited on the driveway like a silver monument to neglected tape measures. 43. Grocery delivery became a crisis when the avocados purchased intentionally hard ripened 3 days later on a warm kitchen counter and suddenly counted as spoiled. Produce keeps participating in biology after the app closes. Fruit is not a paused video. Support reviewed the order notes, saw nothing incorrect, and rejected the refund while the customer photographed one perfectly usable avocado, as though documenting betrayal. 44. The screen protector went on crooked. because the installer rushed, sneezed to trap 2 dust particles, and then pressed the bubbles outward with the grim resolve of someone flattening a political scandal. Later, he demanded a refund on the protector itself. Alignment problems created by the hands holding the product rarely qualify as factory defects. The store said no, and the trapped lint kept gleaming like microscopic witnesses. 45. A rental car came back with a smoke odor thick enough to make the attendant pause mid-sentence. The driver insisted the cleaning fee should be refunded because he had smoked mostly near the window. Fabric does not grade on effort. Smoke clings to seats' vents in every fiber like a petty ghost with legal standing. The company rejected the refund, and the inspection form gained one more tired checkbox. 46. The custom cake had already been ordered with names, colors, and a sugar monogram before the couple broke up. The client wanted every dollar back because the occasion no longer exists. That is the trouble with custom work. It becomes highly specific before your mood can reconsider. The bakery had already baked the initials into fondant history. The refund was denied, and the frozen top tier waited in a box like a formal insult. 47. Home security seemed worth every penny until the motion alert caught a teenager sneaking back through the side gate after curfew. Suddenly, the parent wanted the monitoring fee refunded because the system was too sensitive. Accurate surveillance becomes offensive the moment it starts telling the truth at inconvenient times. The subscription stayed active, and the video clip remained time-stamped proof that technology had done exactly what the brochure promised. 48. A customer argued for reimbursement of a mechanic's diagnostic fee because, by the time the technician inspected the car, the rattling noise had disappeared. Intermittent problems do that. So do guilty alternators, loose heat shields, and drivers who explain symptoms like witnesses to folklore. Paying for diagnosis means paying for time tools and the attempt to catch the problem in daylight. The shop kept the fee and the customer kept the mystery. 49. One traveler bought the cheapest possible airline fare, skipped every warning screen, and later demanded a refund on the seat selection charge because I didn't know basic economy meant basic. It had, in fact, meant basic in 6 separate places, including the box he clicked to continue. Low fares often achieve their magic by removing comfort in plain language. The airline rejected the refund while his confirmation email sat there radiating old honesty. 50. The cruise excursion left the dock at the announced time, while one passenger slept through the morning, after treating the unlimited drink package like a personal challenge. Back on the ship, he demanded his money back because the tour company had been inflexible. Schedules are a cruel genre, especially near water. The excursion departed, the rum remained irreversible, and guest services denied the refund with polished maritime calm. By now, we have seen empty coffee cups, party dresses with alibis, smoke-soaked rental cars, and one man defeated by an excursion alarm he never met. The second half gets bigger than checkout counters. It moves into schools, courts, subscriptions, fees, and the expanding empire of people billing the world for consequences. 51. At daycare pickup, a parent asked for the week's tuition refunded because her toddler had clearly not enjoyed the structure. The evidence was a handwritten note about nap resistance 1 glittercraft and a child currently refusing to leave because he wanted the plastic fire truck again. Childcare charges for care not permanent emotional applause. The center rejected the refund while finger paint dried on a paper handprint nearby. 52. A school field trip got reined into a museum instead of a petting zoo, and one father demanded his money back because the children had expected goats. Weather has ruined better promises than this. The buses still ran, the staff still supervised, and the kids still came home waving souvenir pencils and damp worksheets. The school kept the fee, and the complaint ended up stapled behind a permission slip pile older than reason. 53. City permit offices hear many inventive theories, including the one where a homeowner demanded his fee returned because the inspector had found too many issues to be helpful. Permit reviews are not encouragement sessions. They exist because wiring stairs and exits can become extremely memorable when ignored. The office denied the refund, and the red correction marks on his plans looked like bureaucracy learning to write in bloodless sarcasm. 54. The courthouse filing fee suddenly felt unconstitutional after the plaintiff lost. He appeared at the clerk window, arguing that a failed case should not cost this much. Courts charge for filing, processing, and occupying the machinery of law, not for delivering emotional validation. Legal systems are many things, but outcome-based amusement parks they are not. The fee stayed paid, and the stamped documents sat there in cold procedural dignity. 55. At the veterinary desk, a man wanted yesterday's bill refunded because his dog had received treatment, medication, and a follow-up plan, yet still looked expensive this morning. Medicine can address the infection. It cannot instantly erase the invoice or the memory of your Labrador swallowing half a sock. The clinic declined the refund, while the dog wagged at strangers with the shamelessness of someone who had learned nothing. 56. Premium dating app access had promised more visibility, not guaranteed reciprocation. But one subscriber marched into support chat furious that Better Matches still ignored me. Visibility is not chemistry, and algorithms cannot quietly refund a personality mid-conversation. The service had delivered boosts, filters, and a statistically improved chance, not a romantic hostage situation. The request was denied while his profile photo continued smiling in high-resolution confidence. 57. An influencer returned a ring light because it had failed to make her skin look expensive. The light had, in fairness, illuminated exactly what existed: texture pores and one very committed contour line. Lighting changes shadows, not biology, and soft LEDs cannot negotiate with sleep deprivation. The store rejected the refund, while her tripoded phone kept recording the customer service exchange from a deeply unhelpful angle. 58. The language app charged for a year delivered lessons daily and still received a refund demand because the user had not become fluent despite staying enrolled. Exposure is not mastery. Vocabulary does not crawl from notification banners into the bloodstream by loyalty alone. Support checked the Progress tab, found 7 completed lessons and a 6-month gap, and rejected the refund while the streak icon sat there like a tiny abandoned plant. 59. Meal kit boxes arrived with ingredients, recipe cards, and what one customer considered a hidden insult: actual chopping. She requested reimbursement because the dinners had been more hands-on than expected. Prepped ingredients cost more for a reason, and knife work remains one of the world's less negotiable kitchen truths. The company denied the refund, while one unused packet of parsley wilted in the fridge like neglected garnish and doctrine. 60. Home warranty plans become theological the moment the furnace dies. One homeowner demanded a full refund on years of premiums because the company denied a claim as wear and tear rather than sudden catastrophe. Contracts love definitions because definitions survive tantrums. Maintenance decay is not the same event as an exploding machine. The claim stayed denied, the refund stayed denied, and the fine print kept doing push-ups in tiny font. 61. A freelance designer had already produced concepts, revisions, emergency calls, and 3 logo journeys before the client asked for the deposit back, because the brand no longer felt aligned with her evolving vision. Deposits buy time spent, not universal harmony. Once drafts exist, the labor exists with them. The designer kept the money, and the folder of version files sat on the desktop like sedimentary rock from corporate indecision. 62. Renting a storage unit seemed smart until the customer opened it months later and rediscovered boxes he no longer wanted. Suddenly, he demanded partial reimbursement because the space was basically storing disappointment. That, unfortunately, is one of storage's core services. The locks worked, the roof held, and the forgotten treadmill remained exactly as advertised. Management rejected the refund while dust floated through the unit like old intentions. 63. An escape room group demanded their booking fee back because the clues were too obscure, which in this case meant they had ignored the bookshelf, misread the map, and spent 12 minutes yelling theories at a decorative lantern. Puzzle design can be cruel, but reading remains a favored strategy. The venue refused the refund, and the final unopened clue envelope stayed sealed like a tiny legal smile. 64. A skier wanted his lift ticket refunded because the mountain had been too snowy and hard to see. Winter resorts are one of the last industries still brave enough to market weather without apology. Snow falls. Visibility changes. Goggles fog when people breathe heavily into bad choices. The resort denied the refund while the customer stood there in expensive outerwear, looking ambushed by the season itself. 65. The wedding DJ had held the date built to the playlist and packed the equipment when the groom's cousin suddenly offered to handle music with a borrowed speaker and an ego the size of the dance floor. That was when the couple wanted the deposit back. Expertise becomes expensive only to people who think Bluetooth equals event management. The refund was rejected, and the cousin spent the reception restarting his phone. 66. Locked out at midnight, a driver called a locksmith, approved the quote, watched the door open in under 3 minutes, and then demanded a refund because that took way too little time for the price. Skilled labor often becomes suspicious once it looks easy. Speed is what experience buys. The locksmith denied the refund, and the customer stood there holding rescued keys like proof of his own inconvenience. 67. The antique lamp was sold with gentle warnings tissue wrapping, and the kind of caution normally reserved for diplomacy. It came back in 2 pieces after a customer had put it beside a high-traffic hallway, where a child in a backpack eventually found it. Age gives objects charm. It also gives them fragility. The antique store refused the refund, and the broken porcelain vase looked suddenly very honest about the past. 68. At urgent care, someone demanded the copay back because the long wait had given his headache time to fade. Time does occasionally solve minor things before medicine gets the room ready. That does not turn triage into a magic trick that works for free. Staff charts and clinical judgment had still been present and paid for. The refund was denied while he signed the discharge papers with restored indignation. 69. An online bidder won a collectible at 2 in the morning, then woke up sober and furious that the platform would not reverse the purchase because he had been emotionally optimistic. Auctions are not bedtime journals. Bids become binding precisely because people like this keep existing across time zones. Customer service rejected the refund, and the item shipped the next day with contractual cheerfulness. 70. A crash course promised intensive instruction over one long weekend. What it delivered, according to one student, was too much information too quickly, which he somehow felt entitled him to a refund after attending late, taking no notes, and treating the workbook like decorative cardstock. Compression is the whole product. The provider said no, and the untouched highlighter remained clipped to his folder in pristine denial. The pattern is getting less local now. It is no longer one rude shopper or one dramatic caller. It is a whole faith system. If a service happened and life still felt annoying afterwards, somebody must owe money. 71. A conference attendee asked for her pass refunded because networking felt forced and awkward, as if the organizers had failed to provide a more photogenic species of stranger. The lanyard, panels, coffee, and access had all been delivered exactly on schedule. Professional mingling remains uncomfortable even under tasteful branding. The refund was denied while she stood beside a sponsor wall pretending to text her escape plan. 72. At the co-working desk, a member demanded his monthly fee back because there are never enough quiet corners near the outlets. Shared workspaces tend to contain other workers, all powered by the same desperate need for battery life and selective silence. Community is the product right up until it behaves like a community. Management rejected the refund, and the extension cords kept snaking across the floor like modern roots. 73. A gamer finished the main campaign, unlocked half the achievements, and then requested a refund because the story had been shorter than spiritually advertised. Digital platforms notice playtime for a reason. Once you have used the experience to completion, customer regret starts looking very much like free entertainment with paperwork. Support denied the refund while his save file sat there glowing with total participation. 74. The casino resort fee became offensive only after the customer lost heavily at blackjack and concluded the property should at least reimburse the nightly add-ons as a gesture of fairness. Gambling losses have a way of making every other charge look morally suspicious. Amenities had still existed, towels had still been folded, and the pool had not rigged the cards. The refund was denied beneath a chandelier designed to flatter poor judgment. 75. A bulk case of bottled water came back because the customer disliked the new cap style and insisted the whole product line had become anti-consumer. By then, half the bottles were gone, proving the alleged design outrage had not interfered with hydration. Packaging tweaks annoy people faster than they stop using the package. The warehouse club rejected the refund, and the remaining bottles rattled softly in defeated plastic chorus. The file keeps closing in because the settings keep changing while the logic never does. Different counter, different fee, same sermon. I used it, I chose it, I ignored the warnings, and now I would like reality reversed at retail speed. 76. A professional organizer spent 2 full days labeling bins folding clothes and imposing mercy on a home that had previously operated like an indoor avalanche. A week later, the client wanted her money back because the house is messy again. Children had returned from school. Adults had resumed living. and gravity had not joined the contract. The organizer kept the fee, and the pantry labels looked back with exhausted dignity. 77. After walking through first class on the way to row 32, one passenger decided his paid upgrade from an earlier flight should also be refunded because the premium cabin still contained unhappy-looking people. Better seats reduce knee misery. They do not create universal inner peace. The airline rejected the request, while the curtain swayed between classes like a soft fabric border between fantasy and policy. 78. A bride wanted reimbursement for her printed invitation suite because the guests had failed to RSVP on time. As if cardstock quality had somehow weakened social discipline across 2 families and 1 wedding website. Printers can control paper stock foil and ink alignment. They cannot compel cousins to answer a form. The refund was denied, and a stack of extra envelopes sat there like linen-backed evidence of optimism. 79. One subscriber canceled a therapy app after 3 sessions and asked for the full payment back because my feelings are still here. Emotional patterning tends to survive beyond the trial window. The platform had provided sessions licensed professionals and calendar slots, not a same-day interior renovation. Support declined the refund, while the cancellation survey quietly absorbed one more impossible expectation in tidy multiple choice. 80. At the cosmetic clinic, a woman demanded her consultation fee returned because the specialist had explained that no procedure could create the exact face she had filtered onto her own phone. Digital distortion has widened the refund imagination beyond reason. Consultations exist to deliver reality before invoices grow teeth. The clinic kept the fee, and the before photo sat on the monitor like a small, unedited intervention. 81. A homeowner paid a refinance application fee, then watched interest rates shift while he spent weeks thinking about the vibe. By the time he chose to proceed, the numbers were worse. And he wanted the fee back because the lender had failed to preserve value. Markets do not freeze for indecision, and processing work still costs money during hesitation. The refund was denied beside a stack of unsigned disclosures. 82. The moving company's stair fee seemed outrageous only after the crew arrived and discovered that the apartment remained, quite stubbornly, on the 3rd floor. The customer had left that detail off the booking form, perhaps hoping architecture might soften by morning. Labor multiplies on stairs because gravity negotiates upward at a surcharge. The company refused the refund while another dresser began its slow climb like a punishment in wood grain. 83. Museum tickets became controversial after 2 children spent the visit sprinting past every plaque, and one parent concluded the institution had not been engaging enough to justify the cost. Education keeps making the terrible mistake of requiring attention. The exhibits were present labeled and historically committed. The museum rejected the refund, and a giant dinosaur skeleton continued ignoring the market feedback of the distracted. 84. A would-be renter demanded her apartment application fee back because the building chose another tenant. Screening fees pay for screening. Not guaranteed victory in a housing contest. Background checks, credit pulls, and admin hours had already happened with bureaucratic precision. The refund was denied, and the leasing office printer kept coughing out forms for the next hopeful soul in line. 85. The e-reader itself worked beautifully. The actual grievance was that novels still required focus, and one buyer wanted his money back because he had imagined the device would somehow make reading more automatic. Technology has conquered many humiliations. It has not yet conquered the sentence. The store rejected the refund while the screen displayed a perfectly legible page he had stopped halfway through. 86. The charging cable had survived, being bent, slept on, yanked from walls, coiled tight and stuffed into bags with coins and gum wrappers. 18 months later, when it finally frayed at the connector, the owner demanded a refund for poor durability. Repeated stress weakens the internal wires because copper eventually gets tired too. The retailer declined the claim, while the cable drooped on the counter like a small exposed truth. 87. University parking permits always promise access and never promise romance. One student demanded his money back because he still had to walk from the assigned lot to the lecture hall and called that misleading convenience language. Campuses are built by committees with medieval instincts and little respect for ankles. The permit stayed non-refundable, and the student stomped off carrying both resentment and the backpack he had personally packed. 88. FastPass outrage reached customer service. when a father argued that his family deserved reimbursement because wealth had been made too visible by watching shorter lines move faster beside them. What he had purchased was standard admission, not social equality under roller coaster law. Tiered access is offensive mainly when the tier above you keeps passing in bright wristbands. The park denied the refund while fireworks prepared to flatter the whole hierarchy. 89. A smart fridge was returned in theory, though not in practice, after months of use because it had successfully tracked groceries, while failing to stop the owner from buying more snacks he did not need. Inventory systems can count eggs. They cannot govern impulse in aisle 7. The manufacturer rejected the refund, and the app continued sending honest little alerts about yogurt nearing expiration and discipline nearing collapse. 90. Porch pirate theft turned into a strange support ticket in which a customer demanded the package protection fee back because the neighborhood had always felt safe. Insurance products become insulting precisely when they are needed for what they were sold to cover. Claims have procedures, deductibles have definitions, and vibes are not a recognized security protocol. The refund was denied while the doorbell footage replayed the thief in broad daylight confidence. There it is again at full volume. Not a broken product, not a missing service, but the belief that if expectations wore nice enough clothes, policy should kneel. The last pages of this file are all the same demand with better branding. 91. A subscription meal replacement plan received a furious refund request because the customer kept choosing actual burgers over the shakes and now felt the program had failed to fit real life. Compliance remains the deeply unpopular ingredient in most systems. The company had shipped exactly what was ordered. Support denied the refund, and 3 unopened bottles sat in the fridge like beige judgment in a row. 92. Cloud storage got blamed for a phone full of vanished photos after the user had manually deleted them, skipped the warnings, and then decided the monthly fee should be refunded because nothing protected me from myself. Backup services preserve copies. They do not override your own Final Tap with parental supervision. The claim was rejected, and the empty album thumbnails stared back like polite little gravestones. 93. Premium customer support still involved hold music, and one man considered that such a personal affront he demanded the extra membership charge be reversed immediately. Priority is relative. It means sooner than standard, not instantly at the speed of ego. Representatives were still assisting others who also believed their inconvenience had presidential status. The refund was denied, while the saxophone instrumental kept circling the line with corporate serenity. 94. The wedding planner had created schedules, backup plans, vendor grids, and weather contingencies. None of that prevented rain from arriving on the exact afternoon the couple had chosen to marry outdoors in white silk and emotional denial. Afterward, the planner was asked to refund part of her fee because the day did not feel like the vision. Atmosphere is not line item controllable. She kept the payment, and the damp seating chart bled gently in a hotel hallway. 95. Business class disappointment reached the airline in a carefully worded email asking for compensation because a toddler in the row ahead had cried with democratic force for much of the flight. Premium cabins buy more space, better food, and a curtain. They do not buy a separate species of humanity. The airline denied the refund, and the complainant's lie-flat seat remained a very expensive place to discover that. 96. The custom ring engraving became awkward after the breakup, especially the part where it included a date, a nickname, and a language that now read like evidence in a trial. Still, the jeweler was asked for a refund because the item no longer represents who we are. That is the hazard of engraving certainty into metal. The store declined the request, and the ring sat in its box like a polished little subpoena. 97. A homeowner hired a property tax appeals specialist, lost the appeal, and then demanded the service fee back because the county had remained stubbornly committed to square footage, sales comps, and documents rather than his personal belief that the assessment felt aggressive. Advocacy is a process, not a spell. The specialist kept the fee, and the county letter stayed beautifully unimpressed in black ink. 98. The generator worked flawlessly through 3 stormy months, powering fridges, fans, and one television that kept broadcasting weather in theatrical tones. When the season passed, the owner tried to return it for a full refund because we ended up not needing it that much after all. Emergency equipment is not a rental costume for anxiety. The return was denied while the gasoline smell lingered like practical memory. $99. A coaching mastermind sold access calls, worksheets, and an entire polished dialect of self-reinvention. What it did not sell was instant charisma discipline, or the personality transplant one buyer apparently expected by month 2. When the internal software remained stubbornly unchanged, he wanted every dollar back. Programs can offer frameworks. They cannot drag a person through them by invoice. The refund was rejected, and his untouched workbook stayed offensively clean. 100. A fundraiser dinner promised access speeches and rubber chicken plated beneath patriotic lighting. Afterward, one attendee asked for his ticket refunded because the event had not addressed inflation in a meaningful enough way. Banquet halls rarely solve macroeconomics between salad and dessert. The political operation had delivered exactly what these nights deliver: talking points, applause, and tepid coffee. The refund was denied under a ballroom flag and a chandelier built for optimism. 101. The suitcase returned from vacation with airline stickers, beach sand in the zipper seam, and wheels worn smooth from 6 airport terminals. At customer service, the traveler wanted a full refund because the luggage now looked less premium than when purchased. Use leaves marks. Motion leaves grit. Travel products become travel products by surviving travel, not by emerging untouched like museum props. The return was rejected, and the bag stood there carrying the whole case. A crumpled receipt on a customer service counter tells a small modern story. Somebody bought a thing used. A thing ignored a warning met reality, and then came back hoping policy might behave like a time machine. That is the deeper pattern hiding under all these refund speeches. Entitlement is just regret wearing legal language and asking for store credit. What is the most ridiculous refund reason you have ever heard someone try with a straight face? Subscribe for the next file.